And we're going to start with School Board Position 2. This is Mark Dely, the incumbent, and Gary Tigert, who is the challenger. And in this particular case, Mark, you won the toss for getting the first question. And probably won't surprise you to learn, I'm going to start with the 3 Gs. Lots of questions about the 3 Gs. But let's just start with my information from 2 Shelby County School Board members that I have talked to personally say that with the possible exception of Germantown Elementary, this ship has sailed, that Germantown is not going to get these schools back. Yet nearly all the candidates here tonight say they want them all back without really explaining in detail how they are going to fill the classrooms, how they're going to get them back, except some reference to relationships with the Shelby County School Board, or how they would pay to renovate what are now some very old buildings in need of repair. Nor have any of the candidates addressed what would they do about the parents who moved their child in order to be a part of the Germantown Municipal School System. What is your answer to the likelihood of that happening?
Well, thank you, Richard. And I want to spend a moment to thank everyone for joining us tonight and Leadership Germantown for putting this on. This is just a great event. That's absolutely right in that for us to get back the 3 Germantown schools, we're going to need cooperation from Shelby County. And so we don't have, and there's no guarantee that we'll ever be able to get those 3 Germantown schools back. Anyone who promises you something otherwise, I don't know what to say, but I would not sit up here and promise you that. Now, having said that, I think there are opportunities for us to get at least the elementary school back and possibly the middle school back. Why is that? Well, today, Shelby County is sending kids by bus into our city to go to that school. Ultimately, they're going to figure out that that becomes an expensive proposition. As we grow, and we will grow, particularly on the south side of Germantown, we're going to have a capacity need to fill a school. So where there is a cost issue for Shelby County and there is a need for a school for the city of Germantown, I'm hopeful that we can work out something that makes sense. We've continued to dialogue with Shelby County, and they've remained open to that, as you've said, for Germantown Elementary School. Now, there is a cost issue, there's a capital issue, but if we're looking at a capacity need, then yes, we're going to need to find a way to manage those costs. So I think we do have opportunities to get some of those Germantown schools back, and I absolutely support that. I believe we need a neighborhood school on the south side of Germantown, but I would never sit up here and promise you or guarantee you that that's a foregone conclusion.
Mr. Tigert, how would you like to tackle that question?
This particular issue has come up in just about every forum in which I've attended, whether it be a homeowners association or at the polls. People ask, what do you know about the 3 Gs and what's going to happen with our school system? I think the most imperative thing to understand about this whole deal, that there's a wide swath of people within our community who walked away from this particular situation feeling very disillusioned and left out. That's something that we're going to have to mend. We're going to have to come together and find a way to harmonize our community so that we can be the best school district that we can possibly be. Right now we have 5 wonderful schools. Houston High School has been recognized 4 years in a row by Newsweek magazine as one of the best high schools in the nation, public high schools in the nation. We have all kinds of programs that are recognized not only by the state but nationally. Some folks continue to look back and look back forlornly and wonder what's going to happen. I can't answer that. I know that we didn't hold the positions of negotiation, the seat for negotiation, all the cards, to be able to get those schools. But I think we need to move forward with the schools that we have to become the best possible municipal school district we can, all the while holding in our back pocket that when the time is right, we're going to strike and try and get back our schools.
Along those same lines, gentlemen, everyone, it seems, says they want exceptional schools. I got one email from a father who said Germantown prides itself on being exceptional. We have decorated street signs. We have a first-class fire stations and protection from police. We have medians that look like parks, but argued that our schools, at least the facilities, are not exceptional. Parents are concerned about the need for massive capital improvements. One father emailed me that he has 2 kids in private school whom he would gladly move to their neighborhood school if, quote, I saw some real investment to compete. He pointed out that there are more than 20 temporary buildings at Riverdale, that the gyms are often not air-conditioned. They have tile floors, not hardwood floors. The parking lots at Houston High School are full of potholes that need repaving. Signage around the schools is worn and dated. Do you agree there's a challenge here? How ambitious should we be about attacking it, and how will you want to pay for it? So, Gary, I'm going to let you take the first response this time.
I think it's a very good question. I read Mark's push card, one of his push cards, and he said, the thing that we risk most in rolling out the GMSD is being good when we could be exceptional. Well, I submit to you that the Germantown schools have been exceptional for the 3 decades that I've lived here. And the reason for that is the people, the parents that live within our community, and the educators that we have in our school system. It wasn't built upon any school board. Surely we never received that from the SCS. It was built upon our parents and our teachers. But we do have change coming, and it's in technological innovations. Our children are part of a social media. They all carry phones, iPhones. They work on tablets. My 4-year-old grandson gets in my lap and says, let me show you how to work that thing, Poppy. I think it's imperative. And a very good example is in this last Sunday's paper where they had Educate Memphis. And they talked about schools having electronic whiteboards and the kids having electronic tablets that they used going to school. I have a 1st and 4th grade grandchildren who come back and forth from school with 20 and 30-pound book packs on their back when they could have a tablet carried with them that contains more information than any textbooks could ever contain. I think we have to bring our schools up to the digital age. I envision our teachers being able to teach children by being a guide alongside instead of being what we experienced, the sage on stage teaching from a textbook. I think the opportunities before us are great, but we've got to change exactly what you're talking about. We've got to bring our schools into the social media age.
Okay, I got to cut you off there. Thank you, Gary. My question, Mr. Dely, was about the physical facilities in particular, because there seemed to be a lot of concern about just the fact they're showing their age, and if we're going to compete and actually maybe lure some kids from private schools, we need to invest in them.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll answer that question. Yeah, part of being exceptional is having exceptional facilities, and you're right, they're run down. Look, we have over 20 portables on the campus of Riverdale. Portables were meant to be a temporary solution. They become a permanent solution. A lot of those have been there for almost 50 years. We need to get rid of them. Our schools have not had the capital improvements that they've needed over time. We need to upgrade that. Citizens of Germantown expect better. You look at this facility, you look at our fire stations, you look at our parks. We expect better as citizens. So now the question comes, how do you pay for it? Well, there's no doubt that we'll get capital contributions from the county, and that will pay for some of it. But I think we're fooling ourselves if we think that's going to cover all of it. You know, as I talk to people in Germantown, Germantown citizens want to make sure we have exceptional schools and are willing to pay as long as they're getting return on their investment. The answer to every problem can't be we need more money, but where there's a need, there's an established value proposition that Germantown voters and citizens agree to, people will support that. You know, I have an outstanding relationship with all of the candidates running for aldermen, with the 2 mayoral candidates, and I'm confident that we can work through the funding issues that we're going to need for our schools, because we will need updates and upgrades, but we can do that, and Germantown taxpayers will support that. And we're not talking about huge dollars. A very modest tax increase of a few dollars can have a very significant impact. That's not a short-term need, but that's a long-term need that we'll sit down as a group, the school board and the mayor and aldermen, to figure out how are we going to make that happen.
Next question, and Gary, or Mark, you'll get this first. Real estate agents have complained publicly about how confused their clients become when trying to explain our situation. Particularly if someone is moving in from out of town, they've got a job with IP or FedEx or something, and they're not really familiar with how things have been going here lately. And the challenge in trying to explain it, how the only high school in the Germantown Municipal School District isn't Germantown High, it's Houston High. They advocate renaming Houston High School somehow. Do you think this needs to be addressed? The voters who emailed me on this felt it would go a long way toward unifying the new district if they supported that idea, and those who opposed it said there's a strong history with both and didn't want to see any change made.
So do we need to address it? Absolutely. This is probably the most emotional issue that's out there. If you grew up in the Germantown High School tradition, you're partial to Germantown High School. If you grew up in the Houston tradition, my own son is a student at Houston. He doesn't want to see the name of the high school change. There's two great traditions there. But we need to take a long-term view. We need to be looking 20 years down the road because, Richard, you're right. There's confusion today. And you get outside of Germantown, there's confusion about Germantown High School is not part of Germantown School District? That doesn't make any sense. Houston High School, you go to Houston High School, are you from Texas? Ask our band folks, ask our cheerleaders, they get that. So how do we address it? Well, first of all, we need to make sure that this is not done in a vacuum. It needs to have lots of community input. I don't know what the right answer is, but the right answer at some point down the line is Germantown needs to be in the name of our high school. We've got an issue because there is a Germantown High School, and we've got two very proud traditions. But I believe we as a community can come together and blend those traditions. We're not going to do it immediately. It needs to transition over time, and it may take many years. But I think in the long term, when you go 20 years down the road, the right answer is Germantown is in our school. If you look throughout Tennessee, there's almost no district that has only one high school that doesn't have the city or the district's name in it. And I think we as Germantown residents and community need to make sure our schools are representing us, and long term, that we figure out how to make that happen.
Mr. Tigert, what's your position on this?
I've requested Mr. Haddow to allow me to be on that committee for the renaming of Houston High School so that I might be able to have input on that. I do think that the Germantown moniker, name, was a ploy all along by SCS. I think it's a marketing tool for them. And if you go online and you look up Memphis or you look up Germantown, it still says that it's a part of the Shelby County system, and they're using that ploy as like it's a part of Germantown community. I, too, had 3 children attend Germantown High School. I understand the traditions there. The traditions there were great. For 17 years running, there were best of preps in the commercial appeal. I want you to know that Houston High School is approaching that this year for the 17th year to be the best of preps. I don't know what the answer to the situation is. I don't know if you can't name Houston High School at Germantown or not. But I don't know that Shelby County is ever going to be willing to give up the name Germantown because it's a marketing advantage for them to have that name.
All right, thank you. Common Core, several questions about that. That, of course, was passed with the support of Republicans and Democrats a while back. Governor Haslam has said that he supports Common Core. Seems to be backing off here a little bit lately about maybe changing the name of it to some extent. The Lakeland Municipal School District recently expressed some disfavor to Common Core. People want to know, where do you stand on this and why? Because it's likely to come up before the Tennessee legislature as well in this next session. Gary, you're on this.
What is that, a feint? This is like the 3 Gs. It's come up in every forum that I've been in. People are very concerned about Common Core, so I want to say from the very onset, so that there's no mistake, that I am not in favor of any type of intrusion into our educational system that would industrialize our classrooms, that would steal our students of their individuality, that would thwart their creativity and stifle their initiative. And I think on a lot of lines, Common Core does that. That being said, in 2010, the administration rolled out Race to the Top. And dangling money in front of states, they said, if you'll sign this agreement that you will roll out Common Core through your public educational system, we will give you monies. Tennessee was one of the first states to step up and accept that challenge. So we have Common Core. We have it in math and English language and arts. It's with us. It's a labor that our superintendent is bound to abide by. The Tennessee State Board of Education regulates that curriculum will be taught in our schools. 60% of teachers last year in a survey supported the teaching and use of Common Core in our educational classrooms. This spring, Vanderbilt came out with a study that did a research poll, and that's down to 39%. So the legislature came out and said, hold it a minute. We're putting a moratorium on rolling this out. We will not roll it out to science and social studies. We're going to hold off on doing it.
Okay, got to stop you there. Thank you, Gary. By the way, I'm going to stop the clock here for a minute. If you want to submit a question, I forgot to mention there is a Nike shoebox, an orange, bright Nike shoebox with some index cards and pens, I believe, just outside the doors here. So you're welcome to do that if you'd like. But hopefully we'll get to some questions that are on your mind here. Okay. Next, I want to ask about how the school board operates.
Hey, Richard, could I respond to the Common Core
I'm
question?
sorry. That's my fault.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm going to be even more clear. I'm against Common Core. Common Core, at its heart, is the outsourcing of education outside of Tennessee. What it really is we have an organization in Washington, D.C. determining what are the standards that our kids are going to follow. We in Tennessee should be deciding what those standards are. Our school board should be deciding what those standards are. I would support the repeal of Common Core absolutely, without hesitation. Now, it is a state initiative. So what can we do at the local level? We can do a lot at the local level. First of all, we have to say Common Core, that standard, that's our floor. We need to build our standards up from there so that in the end, we're not concerned about Common Core. We're concerned about teaching at a whole nother level higher. We can do that. We've already started to do that. And I think that's what we can do at a local level, and then we need to rally our state houses to get rid of Common Core so that we in Tennessee can determine our own future.
Okay, very good. Regarding the school board and how it operates, there seem to have been differences this past year in how closely board members follow the wishes of the superintendent. As a board member, do you believe in a more active role or a more passive role, and why?
I think as a board, we need to be engaged. You know, ultimately, the responsibility of the Board of Education is to serve the will of the community. When we voted for local control, we voted to have a voice in our educational system. First and foremost, a board provides the community that opportunity. The secondary function of a board is to provide accountability. Everybody needs accountability. You know, as a board member, I'm accountable to all of you, all of the voters. And just like that, the superintendent in the district has accountability to the school board. Now, what does that mean? I think what it means is when we work together as a board and with the superintendent, that we can be active in creating an even better product. I'm very proud of how our board has worked the last year because we've not always agreed, but we've always worked together to get a better result. And I think when you have people who are engaged, working together, that's when you see the exceptional schools happen. That's when you see us get to an even better result. And I think at the end of the day, our school board has a role in ensuring that our schools are exceptional and has to do that by being active in the process.
All right, Gary.
I'm glad you asked that question, Richard. That's pretty much how I got into this predicament that I'm in sitting here. I was reading the newspaper at home, and my daughter, who's the volleyball coach at Houston and teaches wellness there, came in. And I said, why in the Sam Hill can't we get along with anybody? We're fighting with every neighbor we've got. We're fighting among ourselves. We don't even know if we're going to be able to have a bus system that can bring our children to school. What is wrong with us? And she took that back, and she came back the next day and said, Dad, I spoke with a lot of the teachers, and we want you to run for school board. So I guess that says don't gripe about stuff unless you're willing to step up. Well, I agree that there has to be give and take, and the banter between the school board is great because you have to hear the opinions of all. But you can't make process more important than progress. And eventually your process of arguing your position has to give way to collaboration. You have to come out with a determined position of all people. And hopefully it'll be a win-win. And with regards to Superintendent Manuel, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't know a team in the world that would go out and find the best coach they could find, put him in the position, and then come on Sunday morning and say, let me tell you what play I need you to run. And that's what I perceive has happened to our superintendent. He needs to have the liberty and the freedom to run his staff and to run his system as best he can without intervention from people who don't have that expertise. There's none of us here, unless you're a teacher, that has the expertise of a teacher that sits in a classroom. Those are the people that we need to listen to. Those are the people that need to run our schools. And the school board needs to deal with policy and do all they can to support them to make it the best school system in the world.
I'm going to exercise my right for a 30-second rebuttal here because, Mark, you've been the one who's been the dissenting vote often, or one of them, on some of the more controversial issues. Do you agree with Gary's philosophy there?
What I heard his philosophy is we need to agree with the superintendent. And I agree with the superintendent on lots of things. But where I think that there is something that we can do better, we can do different, I think it's appropriate for the school board to disagree. I think it's appropriate for the school board to bring the will of the community. You know, in the end, most of our disagreements have been about timing. Timing with regard to shared services, timing with regard to tuition, timing with regard to a lot of issues.
I have to cut you off there, but I want to at least let you,
Thank you.
Get some words out there on what your feeling is on that. So we've really come up quickly here on the opportunity for your closing remarks. And by the coin toss that we had earlier, Gary, you get to go first. 90 seconds.
You know, I gave a lot of thought to this, what I would say. And the first thing I want to say is that I would never deign to disparage Mr. Dely's knowledge of the school board. I've been in many managerial positions, whether I was promoted into it or whether I was appointed. And every time I went into that position, I had less knowledge than the person that sat in it before I did. But that wasn't what was important as to whether or not I would be successful. What was important were those life and work experiences that I brought to work every day to help me be successful in those positions. I have a litany of experiences in managerial field. I've taught situational leadership, collaborative decision making. I've worked on a budget of over $5 billion for the FAA on 1, 3, and 5-year out projects, having to do the justification for projects and programs that we were going to implement. And then in the government's wisdom, they said, we want you to move next year to the requirements branch, which I did, so I had to answer every congressional inquiry as to why they were so far down on the waterfall. I've held jobs. I've been a training manager for over 300 people. I've developed curriculum. I've been published in aviation periodicals. I've had a lot of experience in management. Labor management relations, the art of managing change. Our educational system is changing, and we need somebody to deal with that. I've got the experience, and I'm a great candidate for this position, and I'm willing to give him my time, and that's 100% of my time because I'm retired. Thank you.
Mr. Dely.
You know, we've heard a lot of talk tonight, and I'm a big believer that action speaks louder than words. And it's hard in a forum like this to really talk about action, but I brought something along to help me. You may not be able to see this. This is the front page of the Commercial Appeal. It's March 26, 2012. And this is back when we held a rally for our schools, back before we had our municipal school district. This beautiful woman in front is my wife. This lovely little girl is my daughter, and this little boy is my son. I'm not in this picture because they're a lot better looking than me, but I was at that rally. And the reason I brought this is because we've come a really long way when we started to get our own municipal school districts, and I've been here fighting for our own district from the beginning. And I'm so excited that we have opened our doors and that we have our own district. But there's a cautionary tale. And that cautionary tale is that we don't rest on our laurels. We need to make sure that we push, that we demand an exceptional school district. That's why I'm running. I want to make sure my children have an exceptional educational experience, your children have an exceptional educational experience, and the community does. So I ask, when you go to the polls on November 4th, join me in supporting an exceptional school district, and let's finish the job we started 3 years ago. Thank you.
All right, round of applause, please, for the two candidates for school board.